Chapter 26. The Blood Rite. The knife trembled in Ethan's hand, but not from fear. His grip was steady, fingers curled around the worn wooden handle as if the weight of centuries rested in his palm. His eyes never left mine, dark pools of determination and something ancient, something beyond the bounds of this world. Around us, the forest fell completely silent. The wind stilled, the usual rustle of leaves and distant bird calls vanished as if the trees themselves were holding their breath, watching us. I reached out, placing my hand over his, feeling the warmth of his skin beneath my fingertips. My voice was barely a whisper, yet it carried all the courage I could muster. Together. Side by side, we pressed our palms flat against the cold stone of the altar, the surface rough with age and carved deep with symbols that pulsed faintly beneath our touch. The cold seeped into my skin, mingling with the steady beat of my heart. Then, with slow precision, Ethan lifted the blade and made a shallow cut across his wrist. A thin line of blood welled up immediately, dark and bright against his pale skin. I followed, tracing the knife carefully across my own wrist. The sting was sharp, but it anchored me to this moment, to the ritual we were about to complete. The crimson droplets trickled down our wrists, falling into the grooves etched into the ancient stone. The blood seeped into the cracks, glowing faintly as if awakening something dormant. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the forest pulsed. The ancient trees shuddered as if exhaling after centuries of silence, their leaves trembling with newfound life. The thick vines coiled tighter around the altar, writhing like serpents awakened from a long sleep. The hollow behind the altar began to hum, low and resonant, vibrating through the air and beneath our feet. The earth warmed beneath us, radiating a deep, comforting heat that spread through my bones. A red glow spiraled upward from the base of the altar, curling like rising smoke, bathing the clearing in an otherworldly light that seemed to pulse with the rhythm of the forest's heartbeat. "I can feel it," Ethan said, his voice changing, soft, reverent, filled with a power that felt both ancient and eternal. "They're watching. They're waiting for us to finish." Suddenly, I was pulled into something that hovered between waking and dreaming, not quite a vision, yet more real than any memory. I saw Marietta, her hair the same fiery shade as mine, kneeling beside Elia's. Her face was streaked with tears, raw and full of heartbreak. Their hands hovered over the altar, trembling with hope and fear. Her voice echoed through me like a fragile song, carried on the wind. We weren't meant to break it. We were meant to bind it in love, not pain. I gasped as the image faded, the weight of her sorrow settling heavy in my chest. "This wasn't a curse," I breathed, my voice trembling with the truth unraveling before us. "It was protection. They tried to protect the forest, not trap it." But something had gone wrong, something neither Marietta nor Elias could have foreseen. A fracture in their love, a broken promise that twisted the ritual's power into something dark and tangled. And now, the altar was demanding us to finish what had begun over 100 years ago. Chapter 27. The Forest Answers. That night the dreams came harder, more vivid and relentless, pulling me into a world drenched in deep, unsettling red. The air was thick with the scent of earth and something metallic, like iron and old blood. I walked through a forest unlike any I'd seen before. The trees themselves seemed alive, their trunks bleeding dark sap that dripped slowly onto the soft, breathing ground beneath my feet. The earth rose and fell gently, as if inhaling and exhaling in a slow, hypnotic rhythm. Ahead of me, Ethan moved through the shadows, walking with purpose but never looking back. I tried to call out to him, my voice caught somewhere between my heart and throat, but no sound escaped. Panic welled up inside me as I quickened my pace, the gap between us stretching endlessly. When I finally reached him, he was standing at the edge of the hollow where our blood had vanished into the ancient stone. There, just beyond the faint crimson glow, stood a figure, transparent, flickering like a flame struggling against the wind. It was Marietta. Her eyes held a sorrow deeper than time itself, and her lips moved silently, speaking words I couldn't hear but felt in every fiber of my being. Ethan reached out, his hand trembling as he brushed toward hers, desperate to touch what could never be held. I woke up gasping, my skin slick with cold sweat, heart hammering like a trapped bird. The room was thick with silence, broken only by the faint rustle of the trees outside the window. Ethan sat there, wide awake, silhouetted against the moonlight streaming through the glass. His expression was distant, haunted. "You saw her too," I said softly, my voice barely more than a breath. He didn't meet my eyes. "She said I'm not strong enough to save you," he murmured, voice heavy with doubt. "That I'll fail just like he did." The weight of those words pressed down on me, but I crossed the room without hesitation and knelt beside him, reaching out to take his hand in mine. "Then we don't do it alone," I whispered, determination burning through my fear. "We finish this together, as one. If we're going to break the cycle, it has to be us, side by side." He leaned his head gently against mine, and for a single, precious moment, the world outside seemed to still. The moonlight cast soft silver shadows across the floor, wrapping us in quiet solace. In that fragile breath of time, we were not haunted echoes bound by fate. We were just two people, holding on, trying to rewrite the story written long before we were born. But dawn would come, inevitable and cold. And the forest never forgot. Chapter 28, Ashes in the Wind. The next morning, the town was buzzing with uneasy energy. Whispers flitted between neighbors like restless ghosts, shadows stretching longer with every passing hour. We heard it first near the bakery. The familiar streets suddenly felt unfamiliar, as if something unseen had slipped into the spaces between buildings. Someone had broken into the library. We found Sheriff Morrow waiting for us nearby, his brow furrowed, concern etched deep into every line of his face. "Ray," he said, his voice low and urgent, "someone tore pages from the town's historical archives, some of the oldest documents we have, and a display case full of journals, shattered, like someone was desperate to find something, or hide it." His gaze flicked to Ethan, who stood beside me, jaw tight, eyes dark with worry. "There's more," the sheriff continued. "People say they've been hearing voices in the woods, whispered names, warnings, even children. One boy came back with a scar shaped like a tree branch carved into his back. He doesn't remember a thing about what happened." I felt the cold crawl slowly down my spine again, like fingers brushing over nerves long exposed. The air seemed thicker, heavier, charged with a restless, ancient power waking from a deep slumber. Ethan's voice was barely audible, almost a growl. "It's spreading. The forest is waking up and it's looking for answers." Later that day, drawn by a mix of dread and determination, we returned to the clearing with the altar. But the place had changed. Where once the hollow glowed with a fierce, crimson light, now it pulsed dark, an unnatural blackness seeping from its core like spilled ink. The vines that once curled gently around the altar were now blackened, twisting like veins choking a dying heart. The air hung thick with decay and despair. We stood there in silence, the weight of the moment pressing down like a storm about to break. And with a sharp pang, I realized the truth we'd been avoiding all along. "We're running out of time," I said, voice trembling. That very night, Gran's house caught fire. The blaze started in the attic, an angry, hungry flame that devoured everything in its path. We barely escaped, coughing and choking as thick smoke swallowed the sky. Ethan pulled me into the street, his arms a protective shield against the heat and chaos. In the flickering firelight, I saw it again. The tall shadow, silent, still, and watching. But this time it moved. Slowly. Deliberately. Toward us. Chapter 29, The Betrayal. Ethan instinctively pushed me behind him, his body a shield as his eyes locked onto the figure emerging from the flames. But this time, it wasn't made of smoke or bark, nor a shadow flickering between worlds. It was a man. Flesh and bone, standing solid and real amidst the chaos, dressed in a dark, weathered coat that seemed to swallow the firelight. His face was sharp, worn by time yet hauntingly familiar, the same face I had seen in the photograph from the altar box. The man from the past, Elias. His eyes burned with a coldness older than the forest itself, and his voice, when he spoke, carried a chilling weight. "You shouldn't have tried to finish it," he said slowly, each word laced with bitterness and regret. The tree was never meant to be awoken. Your blood opened it. Now it won't sleep again. I swallowed hard, rage flaring in my chest. Why? I shouted, stepping forward despite Ethan's grip on my arm. Why stop us? You loved her. You loved Marietta. Elia's gaze darkened, haunted by memories too heavy for words. She made the choice, he said quietly, voice breaking beneath the weight of centuries. To sacrifice herself, to seal the tree, to keep the darkness at bay. But I couldn't let her go, so I broke the ritual. I begged the forest to bring her back. His eyes glinted with a desperate madness as he stepped closer, the flames casting eerie shadows across his face. And it did, again and again. Each time it takes you her echo, her reflection. Each time I try to save you, and each time I fail. He paused, pain etched deep into every line of his face. I am the reason the curse exists. Ethan's hand found mine, squeezing tight with fierce determination. Elias turned slowly toward him, eyes narrowing with a bitter truth. And you're just another echo, another attempt to break the cycle. You will lose her too. But Ethan's voice rang out strong and unyielding. No, not this time. Without hesitation, he stepped between Elias and me, standing tall and defiant, a barrier forged of love and resolve. The forest seemed to hold its breath. The fire crackled around us. And the battle to break the curse, once thought impossible, had only just begun. Chapter 30, Through the Fire. The forest erupted around us in a thunderous roar. The very earth seemed to scream. Cracking and groaning shattered the night's stillness, the sound like the world itself tearing open at the seams. Roots burst through the soil like angry serpents, twisting and writhing with violent force. The ground beneath our feet split apart, jagged fissures racing outward, threatening to swallow everything whole. Elias moved with a speed born of desperation, lunging toward Ethan with the force of a storm unleashed. Ethan met him head-on, their collision a clash of raw power, storm against flame, fury against will. They crashed into the altar with a deafening crack that sent shards of ancient stone flying into the air. I screamed, but my voice was swallowed by the chaos, lost in the cacophony of splintering wood, shattering stone, and the unearthly wails that ripped through the trees. Half human, half something older, something wild. I was thrown back by the blast, my body hitting the ground hard. A sharp pain bloomed in my shoulder, searing and relentless. Gritting my teeth against the agony, I forced myself upright, eyes scanning for Ethan. Ethan, I cried, crawling through the debris and smoke. He lay on the ground, blood trickling from the corner of his lips, chest rising and falling unevenly. Elias staggered back, his form unraveling like smoke caught on the wind, fading into the night air. Ethan's eyes locked onto mine, wide and shining with tears that cut clean paths through the grime on his face. His voice was barely more than a whisper, fragile yet triumphant. I did it, he breathed. I broke it. Then stillness claimed him. Panic surged through me as I crawled closer, trembling hands cradling his face, my tears falling freely. No, Ethan, stay with me, please, stay, I sobbed, my voice cracking under the weight of fear and love. His eyelids fluttered weakly, and his breath hitched. I'm here, he rasped, voice hoarse but steady. I found you this time. Relief and heartbreak crashed through me all at once. Even before the forest quieted, the winds softening to a gentle sigh, the trees bowing in reverent stillness, I knew something profound had shifted. The curse was breaking. But the cost was everything.